Welcome to the 80s versus 90s podcast, where we react and review everything from the 80s and 90s.
Hey everybody, this is Jesse Phillips. I'm here with my friend Jason Claremont. We talk a lot about random things, but we were thinking that retro stuff is kind of a similarity between the two of us. What year were you born, Jason?
I was born in 74.
74.
And you were born in?
88.
Right. So retro is different.
It's a different meaning.
Yeah.
Yep. But we still enjoy what retro brings to us in terms of feeling. And
Right.
while those things may be different, a lot of those things are the same too. So we just decided, let's actually make a podcast about it. Let's do retro stuff and have fun and watch things that I've never heard of and he's never heard of, and discover more retro things as we go through. So yeah, this is just kind of a basic introduction to what we'll be doing. And in this first episode, as we were talking and kind of just gathering ideas, we were figuring out different cartoons that we watched as kids. And Jason came up with one that I was sure he made up. So what was the name of it again?
So this cartoon was my go-to in the 80s on Saturday mornings, called the Snorks.
The Snorks.
Just like it sounds, snorkel, underwater Smurfs pretty much, but they're not blue, but you'll see.
I'll see.
You know nothing about it, do you?
I have no image in my head of what a snork would be.
This is going to be epic.
So,
Epic.
Any of you guys who have heard of the Snorks, that's awesome. I hope you enjoy our reactions to it. I'll have my cartoon later, but here we go with the Snorks.
All right, Jesse, we just got done watching an episode of the Snorks. I have to admit, it's been a while since I've seen one.
Did it hold up to how you remembered it? How did you find the episode?
Yes, it held up. I mean, the episode we watched, I really don't remember. Mm-hmm. But it definitely held up for the most part. I feel like I needed a longer episode.
So you wouldn't be embarrassed to be like, you should watch the Snorks. You would tell someone to go watch it.
I would have to let them know about the video quality. Like, it's a little bit cheesy. But I want to hear what you have to say. Then I'm going to tell you what my older self thinks.
Okay. So, first time seeing it, never having been a snork watcher previously, I think that style of animation brings me back.
Yeah.
Like, there are a lot of cartoons when I was a kid that had that style. And I think, especially in the early 90s, like when things were in syndication, I saw a lot of shows that were similar. Maybe not the Snorks exactly, but that hand-drawn,
yeah.
few colors, like
Yeah.
nothing crazy. So there's definitely a nostalgia factor in it for me, even though I had never seen it. I would say the storyline was a little more in-depth than I thought it was going to be. There's a lot of political commentary with like Earth resources and running out and entrepreneurship and the price
gouging. I did not remember that.
Yeah, so those were the elements of it. If I were to have seen this as a kid, I think I would have really enjoyed it. But there's something deeper, even as an adult watching it. If I was watching with if I had a kid or even babysitting or something, seeing them watch it, I'd be like, oh, this is interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting to think, like, you hear about people complain about movies that come out saying there's a political agenda to it. Mm-hmm. I had no idea that these 80s cartoons, some of them had that.
Oh, for sure.
And not that it offended me or anything, but I don't remember them having an agenda.
Well, even Captain Planet, like his whole show was basically
his whole
one
show,
agenda.
Yeah, but even with like shows like the Snorks or the Smurfs or Looney Tunes or some of those, like some of them did have. And this particular episode had a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot packed into
like
that.
It was
12 minutes or something?
Yeah, it was 12 minutes. It definitely was, like you said, the environmental, the free trade, the free market, the price gouging, down to, they didn't mention it, but taxation of, you got to give this back. You can't just keep all your money. Or
it was
clams.
on public property.
Clams.
Yeah.
Which I think was awesome. But there were some funny things, like, the terms they used. One thing that stuck out was everything they talked about it takes place under the sea, in the water. So everything they talked about was something to do with under the water, except for one thing. Is the girl said, I want to save up to eat a gumball. But everything else was like, had to do with kelp and clams and I think they have kelp burgers and like, I think that's what he called his burger. I don't know.
Yeah.
Then she's like, randomly, I'm going to save it for a gumball. Like,
Yeah.
didn't fit the rest of everything else.
Maybe someone dropped it in the ocean.
Yeah.
Overall, I'd say it was better than I thought it was going to be.
That's
I was
good.
just prepared for. I'd never heard of it. I was like, this could be terrible.
Yeah.
It was interesting. Like as I've gotten older, there have been some like political agendas, like socialism and stuff that have been brought up in older cartoons, and you see a little bit of that with that older Snork. Kind of being like, you have to give this back to the people because it was on people's land. And
he was Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, he was.
Same hair and everything.
Same hair. I mean, it could have been him in the 80s too. He was already
Right,
90 years old
That's
back
true.
in the 80s. But yeah, overall, I enjoyed it.
Good.
So next up, we're going to watch a cartoon from the 90s called Rocko's Modern Life. And this was a show that I watched a good bit. I haven't really seen much since I was a kid, so I haven't watched any clips on YouTube.
Right.
Anything. This was just like when I was a kid. I watched Rocko, and I know that there are a lot of suggestive things that might have been in it because I've seen articles on BuzzFeed about some 20-year-old going back through and watching Rocko again and being like, "Wait a second, what's that?" I haven't seen it since, so I'm curious to know your thoughts.
Yeah, and for me with this show, the only thing I know about it is the title. I couldn't tell you what the characters look like.
Yes.
I've heard of it in the 90s, but I definitely have never seen an episode.
Perfect. Well, we'll watch one. So we just watched an episode of Rocko's Modern Life. What'd you think, Jason?
Okay, so since it's the same episode as the Snorks, like you, I had no idea what it was going to be. My first thought was it reminded me of other cartoons like Ren and Stimpy that look, even from maybe the early 90s. There was another one I was thinking of too, and it reminded me of that look, which I loved. Like you said, it was nostalgic. That was even for me too. Mm-hmm. I was like, okay. I thought it was really funny. I definitely laughed. One thing I noticed, which I think actually was better in the 90s than the 80s, is they clip the scenes so quick. Like
the pacing
is super fast. Where looking back at the Snorks and other cartoons I watched, the pacing needed to be faster. So the pacing was super fast. It was very funny. It's funny that both random episodes we watched had to do with money.
Yeah.
And supply and demand.
Mm-hmm.
Both episodes did, the Snorks and this. And Rocko's. But yeah, I thought it was really, really funny. I mean, it definitely would make me want to watch another episode or two just to see. I'm curious if my kids have seen it, what they know about it, since it's been a while since you watched it.
Yeah.
What stuck out to you?
Wow, there's the first thing that kind of came to mind was I can see now that some of the kids I was friends with, their parents didn't let them watch Rocko. And I can see that on multiple levels.
Yeah, there was a few things in there I could see for sure.
The first thing for me was just the sheer noise, where it's always just loud and...
It was the entire 12 minutes. It was loud.
So I can see like a parent from the other room being like, "You are not allowed to watch that show because it gets on my nerves."
For sure.
But yeah, there are a couple other little weird things like really, really big man's nipples.
Yeah.
Some weird things where you're just like...
His magical chest hairs.
Yeah. Just a little weird.
Weird.
Little off.
A little off. It wasn't inappropriate, but it was just off.
Yeah. And I think that like the 90s humor, just like really slapstick, a lot of just like, I mean, when he was signing autographs and pulling the things away from the kids, the arms would come off.
Yeah,
and,
very slapstick, yes.
Very physical, a lot of like really weird stuff happening too, with like eyeballs going into other people's eyeballs when they're looking closely at them. And so yeah, my first thoughts were, I can see how parents that I was, the kids that they had and I was friends with, I can see why they weren't allowed to watch Rocko.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing about this particular episode, it did still have a good storyline because he really, through the pressure of his boss, Rocko made the right choice and stuck with his best friend because his boss was not making the right decision there. Rocko did what he asked plus more and stood up for his friend and the right thing. So there was kind of a storyline to it, where on the Snorks episode, besides preserving a rare species of plant, that was it. But I could see me relating to this as a kid more because Yeah, I mean, your friends are friends forever, right? I
Yeah.
mean,
And for me, Rocko was in charge of a comic book store, and I loved comic books, and it was just, a
Oh,
lot of
yeah.
those elements.
is really, really Big Man in more episodes?
I think so. I think he's in a couple.
And what about Filbert?
Filbert is,
Is for sure. Okay.
Yep.
And what kind of animal is Rocco?
I think he's a kangaroo.
I mean, he had like an Australian accent, kind of.
Yeah, he might not be a kangaroo. He might be a marsupial of some sort.
He had an accent, and I couldn't tell if it was Australian or what it was. But
It was a bad Australian accent.
It was really bad.
Well, as a kid, I remember him having just like a really thick Australian accent.
Okay, yeah.
And listening back, I'm like, I don't think that guy was Australian.
No.
But yeah, Heifer, the cow in that like image, he was kind of like in way more episodes that I remember as a kid.
Yeah.
So it was interesting that he wasn't even in this episode at all.
Yeah. Our episodes we watched were very similar because, like, my main character in the Snorks All-Star was at barely. You saw him at the beginning drive a car or whatever, underwater vehicle, and that was it. It wasn't even about, and like All-Star, like the whole thing's around him.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
For sure.
You definitely saw a jump in generation as far as what the look was, and even the humor to a point too.
Oh, yeah.
So, which is actually, I think, it's kind of cool. And I know cartoons nowadays are even way different, but yeah,
For sure.
for those two, I think that was a good comparison of what. Like, I was 10 when I watched the Snorks. You were probably what age?
8, 9,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
same. I probably watched Snorks before I was 10, but that particular episode would have been when I was 10. So,
Yeah.
all right, Jesse. Based on that episode of Snorks that we watched today, would you watch another episode?
I think so. I think based on just kind of the storyline and how each of the characters kind of had like a different perspective and moral.
You're lying.
No, I think I would watch another one. I think I could do it. It's a little slow for my taste. I wouldn't jump to watch it,
Right?
but I could watch another episode.
I think that's fair, and this is what I think. If you watched another episode, you wouldn't watch another one after that.
Maybe that's true. I feel like if I cared about the characters a little more,
Yeah.
maybe I would watch more. But
Or not.
yeah, well, true. Depending on how I felt about the characters, I think it's for me the nostalgia was just in the style of animation,
Oh, for sure.
and so I'd probably choose something more along the lines of like an action-y cartoon rather than
Yeah.
whatever
That makes sense.
Snork characters.
Snork, that
those
was
little oniony looking guys.
Snork-alicious.
Yeah. So how about you for Rocko? Now that you've seen it, would you watch another episode?
I would watch another episode. Same as I don't know that I would jump to it or binge watch it. It was a little fast for me, but I was laughing, and I did find myself now knowing that a couple of the characters are reoccurring, wanting to see like the friendship between Rocko and was it Filbert?
Filbert.
Yeah. I was really hoping Filbert's around more than that one episode.
Yeah.
So, yes, I would definitely watch at least one more episode.
Yeah, I think you put it in a good way not to binge watch it because I think some brain cells might be lost in the process of doing that. And even just maybe some permanent ear damage
Right.
from just the sheer noise coming
Yeah.
from the episode. But yeah, overall, I think I'd watch more too. There is a new episode on Netflix. I'm a little worried about it ruining my childhood with the 45-minute episode that's on there. I have no idea what it's about, but I'll probably watch it.
I can't. 45 minutes of that, I would have to watch in segments.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure what it is, if it's like a one story or if it's cut into mini episodes.
bunch of them, yeah.
Yeah, definitely curious about it. So I think we've found two winners and two rewatchable television shows.
I agree.
Thank you for introducing me to the
Yes, and
Snorks.
thank you for introducing me to Rocko
Yeah. And his modern life
in his modern life.
in the 90s.
Yeah.
But